Longest Day is a podcast from a female-founded destination practice that believes that crisis isn't an if, it's a when. We are an organisation unafraid of crisis, but have never known one to be resolved in a single day. However long the day or night that gave rise to the crisis in the first place, there's always something we can learn. I'm Leah, the founder and CEO of Broadstairs Consulting, a problem-solving consultancy offering crisis and governance advisory services to help leaders and organisations thrive and flourish. We operate in the gap between legal and public relations, at the coalface of difficult situations, believing that most crises are avoidable and the impact of inevitable ones usually can be mitigated. Our guests have overcome a litany of crises. Many of our guests have worked with us in some capacity in the past. All of them have stories worth hearing. We trust them to make this worth your while. We hope it helps you trust us. Tobi Oredein is an award-winning women's lifestyle journalist, media entrepreneur and international public speaker based in London. She focuses on race, feminism, beauty politics and popular culture. Tobi founded Black Ballad in 2014, an independent media and data company for and by Black women. It was the first women's lifestyle publication in the UK to transition from a free site into a subscription media company back in 2016. As CEO, she is responsible for driving the overall vision of the business. It aims to be the leading lifestyle company for Black women, not just in Britain, but in Europe. Tobi is also a prominent voice in mainstream media and has been commissioned by BuzzFeed, British Glamour, Grazia, LUK, The Independent, Vice, Stylist, and many others. She has also interviewed a range of public figures and is a passionate speaker herself. Before recording, we lament the loss of Galdem for the media community and talk about all things entrepreneurship. Here's our conversation. Well, I wonder if you might like to describe your longest day.
My longest day came last year and this year when I realised I had made a mistake in who I hired. Ooh. I think, so, doing Black Ballad, I've always said that I wanted to have an amazing team of Black women. And I am a believer in that, the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with your village or your community. And I believe that any business, you have to have superstars on your team and people who are more talented than you, people who make you feel like I need to up my game. And in the past I've hired two people who just were not good at their job. Fundamentally, and I think as CEO, you see things that no one else sees, and it's harder when one of those people is very well liked in the team, has a great dynamic and rapport with everyone else, but because you're seeing that they're not doing the work, it gets tense between you two, and it can kind of look like you're a bit of a bitch as a boss. And I think that definitely came across to one of the people that I realised wasn't good at their job. And I think, I try to be very encouraging. I try to be like, look, I believe in you. Like, I've hired you, so I believe you're a superstar. But twice, I've realised that I'm lying to myself and the team because not everyone here is a superstar. And that's really hard, especially when you actually like the people. No matter what people think, you actually genuinely think they're nice people, then they're talented. But is the fault on me because I've hired wrong? And having conversations where not necessarily firing people, but positioning people to leave. And I've never actually fired people, but I've had conversations where the next hour or the next day, people said I have to resign. And that's actually, as a manager, actually, especially in this UK, that's kind of the best way to do it, because when you fire someone, there's a lot of legal that can come with that. So as a manager, your job is actually to position someone to leave, and I've had to do that twice. And that's a very horrible thing to know, that you're going into a conversation with someone and the purpose of that conversation is to make them recognise that they don't belong in the team or they don't belong in that position.
You say you've had to go through that twice.
I've done it twice.
So how did the second time feel in comparison to the first?
I think the first time was easier. And the first time was easier because everybody in the team could see that this person wasn't good at their job. But the second time was harder because there were people that believed this person was good at their job and liked this person. And I've had to reckon with something as a boss. You can not always be liked in your decisions. I've really found that out in the last couple of years. And I really love my team. I actually really like the people I work with. But I don't like nobody enough to be a sinking ship.
You're an entirely remote business.
Yep.
And you're a small team.
Yep.
So how did you come to this decision and how did you communicate this decision?
So first time round, obviously you have mentors, you have board, you have investors. First time round, I had to speak about the dynamic with the team with some mentors and some investors, and everybody spotted it but me. And that's when I realized my personal feelings were getting involved in terms of, I like one of those people. One of those people who's been riding with Black Ballad for a long time, and everyone around me, co-founder, mentors, put everything on paper, basically was talking about the team and what everyone brings. And everyone was like, this is personal feelings. You like this person or you want this person to do well, but we don't think they're great for the business. We think, and I think the thing people also have to understand is when you're an employee, your job is to make yourself indispensable. It's actually on you to make your boss feel like if you go, I don't think this company will function as well. If you leave, I don't feel like I will hire, or I think it will be so hard to hire your replacement. So rather than going through the whole thing of trying to get a replacement, I'd rather give you what you want. I'd rather come to some sort of compromise. And I believe the team that I have now as it is, if any of those people walked away, I would be in a fluster of how to replace them. But what made it hard in terms of these two people that I had to say, like, I don't think you're up to scratch, both forgot that I had done their jobs. And that's the worst part. When I have done your job, and I've done your job a heck of a lot better, why am I paying you? Why am I paying you? Forgetting personal feelings, forgetting whether we've come to some sort of like we don't agree. Sometimes personalities you just don't get on. But I think people, when you're a CEO, you actually have to you push all of that to the side, and you for me as well, people forget, I started Black Ballad in my bedroom. And I personally don't like someone, but I think you're good for my business, I will keep you on because I have toiled and I have fought and I have scrapped and I've had sleepless nights over this business. So if I believe you are such an asset, I will make it work.
Tell me about the time horizon from either somebody else telling you or you realizing for yourself that somebody wasn't the right person for your business and then getting them out of the business.
First time was pretty quick. So it was like I was on mat leave, came back properly end of beginning of July. That first person was gone by end of July. So that was pretty quick. Second person, the realization started to dawn on everybody who looks at Black Ballad who's not, I would say, so the team, that's the six of us now. So then you have your mentors, you have your investors, and, obviously my co-founder, we have a separate conversation. And across the board, in the same sort of conversation about the other person left first, there was a united sort of narrative of this person here, the company might be able to do without them. And I was like, I don't think so. I think, I think they're a talent. I think, maybe I've been on mat leave and I hadn't managed them properly as well because I'm a very hands-off manager and I realized that this person in particular wants me to be very hands-on and that's not my management style. So then I thought maybe if I change my management style, we'll see a pick up. And then beginning of the year, so January, I looked back and I realised, like, I'm not really seeing the results I need from this person. You know, you judge against things like, you know, if you're in sales, how many deals are you bringing in? If you're a writer, how many pieces have you written? How many pieces have you written that have actually done extremely well? How are you writing? And it just wasn't there. And it was really hard for me because, as I said, like, despite what the person in question thought, I actually wanted them to do well because I've known them for a long time. And then me and the employee had a conversation in January, and the conversation didn't go well. And when you're not good at your job, and I realised you don't want to be managed by me, it was just, this is not going to work.
Was it your personal relationship with this person that made the decision and the experience of saying we can't work together that made this your longest day? Or was it simply the act of having to go through the conflict to remove somebody from the business?
I would say the personal feelings. Like, I think if the first person was super quick because I didn't have that personal relationship with them, but where I'd known this person for quite a while and I know how they felt about the business, I kept delaying in having certain conversations with them. But there was a conversation that happened, and then I think I said, yeah, you can't be in the business anymore. You can't. And then, as I said, as a manager, especially in this country, your job, the best result is for them to remove themselves. And you start to think about, well, okay, you're not doing this, so let's lay out the metrics. And when I see you're not hitting the metrics, there's a clear problem. So from about January, February, I started laying out a plan of, okay, cool, if this person's going to succeed here, they need to hit all these things and we need to see these things. And when you start to see that these things are not going to happen, you have to have a tougher conversation. And it probably dawns on them that maybe they can't do the job, or maybe this isn't the right company for them. So that's kind of how that happened. So my longest day has been the realisation that I've hired wrong, and the realisation of having to have those the day you have those conversations with people, because you genuinely don't like... I don't know a person that loves conflict. I don't know a person that loves conflict. And if you do love conflict, well, I don't want to be near you.
Yes, there's definitely a difference between loving conflict and being able to deal with conflict. Yeah. I guess one of the questions I have as somebody else who owns a small business is the cost consequences of getting it wrong for you and the team. Was there any kind of criticality there from your co-founder, from your investors? Like, in addition to the emotional pressures that you were feeling about this situation, what was going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, someone was so financially damaging because they were so highly paid in the company for a small business. It could have been critical if they stayed on any longer. So that also pushed me to get that person out really quickly. Just too financially critical. But then the other person, not as financially critical, but for a small business, especially in this climate, any money wasted is critical. So there are definite financial consequences. And the truth is, as an employer, every person's an investment. Because it's not just the money you get paid, it's, if there's a course that I think is going to benefit you and benefit the business, I should pay for that course. If you need a piece of equipment, I should be paying for that equipment. We didn't do it so much. We didn't do it last year, but in 2021, we had like a lunch and learn where, the team got to speak with a financial advisor for their own personal sort of, we got to ask our questions about, personal finances. And I want to do that again, this year or next year, again, having those like lunch and learns. That's an investment for you to be there. So not just being like not just your salary draining from, the bucket, but how do we invest in you? Because, every Uber you take, every train journey you take to another city to do a project, that is money. And then if I want you to stay at Black Ballad, I need you to grow. Am I willing to put the resource into you? And those are questions you have to ask yourself. You know, the team that I have now, I would love to give them everything, you know, that I can do to make them. And I say something to my team as well. If you leave Black Ballad, I have to look and say to myself as a manager, have you grown here? Have we done the best job of, you know, letting you thrive? And I'm not going to claim that I'm the best manager in the world. Like, I have a lot to learn. You know, this is my first time as being a CEO. But if you look at someone and you say, this just isn't working, like, I'm not seeing your ability, you kind of have to let them go, and you kind of have to let your personal feelings slide to the left, as it, you know.
How did you forgive yourself for making poor hiring decisions?
In one case, I don't know if I have, because it was so financially critical and it put me under a lot of pressure. And it was too close to the line for the company. So I don't think I have in one sense. The other sense, and so I'm talking about the first person that took 3 weeks to get rid of. I don't think I've forgiven that because they were just so financially critical. And I had a gut feeling that this wasn't going to work very early on, but I was on mat leave and I kind of just said, you know what, sure, you know, I've hired them to be an expert. So I haven't forgiven myself for that one. Second person, definitely forgiven myself. Took me a longer time to do, but I think I've forgiven myself for this one because I think attitude matters. I think the first person that I let go, I think they kind of just knew and didn't actually give me a hard time. Whereas the second person was just a drain, like just a financial and emotional and mental drain. And I think, like, not only for me was it not working in terms of what we needed as a business, but when you just don't want to be managed by the CEO, I'm looking at any way just to get you out. So they just, no matter, like, overall, they just wasn't a good hire. And I've kind of just forgiven myself for that because, yeah, you just cannot have someone who's unwilling to be managed.
We'll continue the interview after a short ad.
It's hard not to feel disillusioned by the fashion industry. To get that piece you want, you either have to compromise your budget, compromise the product quality, or compromise your ethics. But we believe there's a better way. Positive Retail brings you second-hand designer fashion that offers more than just a new fit. Our goal is to categorically change customer perceptions of resale and provide joy, protect the planet, and create community. Find us in stores in Margate, Ramsgate, and Deal, and online at positive-retail.com.
That was Anna, founder of Positive Retail. Thank you. Let's get back to the interview. A lot of young entrepreneurs hire their friends.
Yes.
What advice would you give budding entrepreneurs about working with their friends in a business context?
Well, I work with my spouse. So, you know, when I started Black Ballad and I didn't have any money, my friends were my team. And none of them work for Black Ballad now. But I think I was really clear in terms of, like, I'm getting this project off the ground. Can you help me? And, like, just being really clear, like, this is not forever. Like, I just need your help now. And then I think my friends, as it started to progress, they slowly started to say, I don't think you need us anymore. And they, you know, kind of walked away. And, you know, when I started filling roles with people who genuinely had the time and passion. So I think have very clear, like, this is not a forever thing. Like, I'm aiming to kind of have your help for like 3 months and see where I am. So clear lines of communication and walking people step by step of what you're trying to aim for, I think is really helpful. And then I think also when 3 months comes, if you're not at that place and people are running to leave, you can kind of just let them leave because they're not going to be that helpful. But if people are like, oh, you know, I'll stick around for another month, that's also really helpful. So you can kind of gauge where they are with you on your journey. So clear lines of communication, it's just that simple to me.
And as a first-time CEO, how do you feel like your career as a journalist has prepared you for running this I'm going to call it out, inspirational, encouraging, transformative brand for Black women, not just in the UK, but internationally?
Well, the heart of Black Ballad is media. So I've been able to use my experience to lay the foundation of what the editorial is. Of course, I have to give all credit to Jendela Benson, who has taken
Whoop,
it,
whoop.
who's our head of editorial, who's taken it to a level that I don't think I would have. But you know, just just being able to have someone in the company that's been in the newsrooms, that's done journalism, you know, whether it be as a freelancer or be in-house at BBC or be, you know, in-house at, you know, when it was IPC Media, you know, at sort of like women's lifestyle and like entertainment, being a foundation to our editorial is and how to look for a story and what we're looking for in a story has been helpful. But also, I think being a journalist, you know, I started my career, I graduated in 2011 and I was in a newsroom the same year. You know, the race conversation, we didn't have that language then. And being the only Black woman in the office was very isolating and it wasn't a nice place to be. So as an overall CEO, I am very clear on the sort of company culture that I want. And I want to have people in the company where no matter where you are positionally, you feel like you can express yourself and you can, you know, have ownership. I never want anyone in my company to feel like they are excluded from conversations or feel fearful when going into meetings, how I did. So I think it's definitely the practical side of the journalism that's the heart of Black Ballad has prepared, you know, the company and me. But it's also the fact of how I was treated in certain newsrooms. Like one thing I always say, if Black Ballad grew and there was little cliques in the company, I would iron it out very quickly, because those are sort of things that can make, especially if you're, you know, you have something, you know, just out of uni, early 20s, kind of makes them feel like they don't want to come into work, because that's how I felt. I know what it's like to go into a working office and have no one speak to you for the whole day. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to feel anxiety because you know people don't want you there. But one thing I'll always say is, in my first job as an entertainment journalist, I had such encouragement from the sub-editors, and they just encouraged me in my talents. They really spoke words of wisdom and belief into me. And I try to put that across to my team. I try to be supportive, whether it's a personal issue, whether it's a professional issue. One thing I always ask in my one-on-ones is like, how are you? I'm not asking you how you are in relation to the work. I'm asking how you are as a person. And I'm so grateful to the 3 sub-editors that I worked with at, you know, my first job, because they was always interested in my well-being and then my development as a journalist. And I try to have that sort of management style.
What have you learned about yourself through your longest days?
What I've learned about myself through my longest days is that I like to be prepared. I rehearse conversations. I have points. I try to think about the answers people are going to come back with. It's not always guaranteed, but in the longest days of letting people go, I took months digging through your work, having every stat, talking to line managers, talking to other team members. Like, people may not notice the questions that I'm asking or the way I'm positioning, but if I'm going to have like those sort of conversations, you should know that I've been thinking about this for months. I don't do things on a whim. I will dig and dig and dig. I'll look at every piece you've written, every conversation you've had. I'll be asking you about certain emails, certain interactions, because for me, I'm presenting a case of, you are not going to get out of this. It's airtight. So I like to be very, very prepared. I'm not someone that does things on the spur of a moment. I'm not spontaneous like that. And it helps me have no emotion. It helps me be very much like, this is a transactional conversation. This is a business conversation. This is a professional conversation. So in order for me to take out the feeling of these sort of conversations, I spend months in preparation.
And how did your team respond to your longest days? Because obviously you said that you were gathering information on the person, but also soliciting feedback from them. And, I think it's very easy in a small company for people to be very critical about not just the decisions you're making, but how long it's taking you to make them. How did these situations affect your team?
Not everyone in the team knew, which is the right thing. Because there are relationships, and it has to be an air of professionalism. Obviously, there are conversations that you have with your co-founder, and then it might be any sort of mentors or advisors or investors. But the people that knew, one thing I'm glad about, they didn't say, "Oh, I told you so." They didn't say that to me. It was kind of like they gave me the room to say, "She's a first-time CEO." Okay. And they were really encouraging. They were really like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? One of the things, about my co-founder, he gave me real honest feedback in terms of, did I manage well? Like, did I manage these people well? And there were some hard truths that I had to learn that, like, as CEO, you need to be very, very adaptable to how people are managed. You can treat everyone fairly, but you can't treat everyone the same. Like, there are people in my team, they want to have the instruction and go ahead. And if they make a mistake, they'll come back to me. And there are some people that want to be handheld every step of the way. And I have to be able to do both and be comfortable doing both. And I realised in the hires that I got wrong, my management style wasn't adaptable. I didn't do the hand-holding that these people needed. I kind of was like, well, everyone else figures it out. You should be able to figure it out. And people were very nice about giving me that critique, but in a way that wasn't spiteful. It was just very constructive, that if I'm going to take this team forward and grow this team, you need to learn that there's a difference between micromanaging and a difference between managing. So encouragement and good constructive feedback was what, the people around me gave me.
I love that. I'd like to hear briefly how you managed to let go as CEO on maternity leave twice.
Oh, some may say I didn't. Some may say I didn't in some areas, and then I let go a little bit too much in some areas. Firstly, first time round, I don't think I did, because my daughter was born. We went into lockdown in March 25th, I think, first lockdown. My daughter was born first week of April. So I always say there are COVID babies and there are COVID babies. Anyone that had their babies in the first lockdown when we didn't know what COVID was is not the same as having my son, who is, October 2021. That's a different ball game. I think if you've had your child in the summer of 2020, it's different. When my daughter was born, there were a lot of complications that ended that which resulted in me staying in hospital for the best part, like a week. So when I came out of hospital with my daughter, I imagined going to play groups. I had none of that. There was nothing. So the times when she did sleep, or the time, when, dad was, in dad mode and like giving me time, I was kind of bored. So to just keep my mind ticking over, I worked. And also COVID was so scary. I didn't want to sit and think about, oh my God, like I'm in this new world and nobody knows what to do. So I actually worked as a distraction, because there wasn't actually much to do when my daughter was born. So first time around, I didn't let go. Second time, I did like meetings to kind of keep abreast of things. But I think I was kind of half in, half out. And I think you need to make your decision. You either be in fully or you be out fully. And I think that caused a lot of confusion. So I'm not having any more kids anyways. However, I'm not. However, as someone that is a Christian who knows what God has in store for me, if I was to ever have another baby, I would completely remove myself. It causes too much confusion, and people think you're accessible, and then your team think you're accessible, and then when you don't do the follow-ups, they're confused why. So didn't let go the first time, so I was like really still completely in, and I think because I was completely in pretty much, it was fine. But my co-founder, who happens to be my husband, and then I had editorial Jadella Benson, were really lovely, and both saying to me, Toby, like, you don't have to work. And I was kind of like, But then I eventually explained to my husband why I needed to work. He was like, okay, work. Like, I get it. Like, this wasn't the maternity that you imagined. But second time, half in, half out, it caused too much confusion. So I kind of had like one hand on the reins, and that wasn't good.
If you had to live your longest day again, what would you do differently?
One of my investors said, hire slow, fire fast. I'll just follow that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's as simple as that. I think I would have put more targets in place for people to reach. I think I was very much like, people work hard. So, and if you love Black Ballad, because it's such a sort of, mission-driven, very specific sort of organisation, I just expected people to bring their A game and not need to be as monitored. I would definitely have been more forceful with targets in the beginning, and definitely anyone that comes in now, targets, probation, passion is not enough. So I would definitely do hire slow, fire fast.
Last question. At Broadstairs Consulting, we are very passionate about food.
Ooh.
And so we want to know, if you needed to fuel your longest day, what food would you choose to keep you going?
I'd probably say Nigerian omelette and yam. That is my favourite food. But it's really like filling, so you don't actually need to take too, like you can have enough, and you can actually just work and get on and not really need to take a lunch break. And I know that people be like, oh my God, you need lunch breaks. Yeah. But when you've got a lot to do and you've got kids to pick up at 6:00, you need every minute. So I would have like Nigerian omelette and yam, because one, I love it and I enjoy eating it. And two, you don't really need to eat anything else until the evening.
I love that. Well, I've loved speaking to you. I've loved hearing about your experiences. And I really am excited about what is waiting in store for Black Ballad. And I'm really proud of you for all you've done so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You've been listening to a Broadstairs Consulting Limited podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Tune in soon to hear the next instalment of The Longest Day. Copyright 2023. Production copyright Broadstairs Consulting Limited. All rights reserved.